I'm sorry, Mom, but my wife is more important to me. When I, Margaret Thompson, heard those words, my heart shattered. My hopes of seeing my son one last time after my surgery were dashed instantly. And the next morning, at the threshold of my new home, I was confronted with an unsettling reality. My name is Margaret Thompson, and I am 75 years old. I was born and raised in the suburbs outside New York City and have lived here for over 50 years. I spent many years working as an accountant at a small bakery near the train station. Despite the solitude of crunching numbers alone in the back office, being surrounded by the comforting aroma of freshly baked bread was my solace. My husband passed away suddenly in a construction accident when our son was just 6 years old. From that day on, I took on the roles of both mother and father, walking the challenging path that lay ahead. Those days were indeed tough. Mornings were spent at the bakery, and nights at a shipping company doing part-time work, sorting packages. Yet, no matter how tight the finances got, I set aside $300 each month at the bank for the future. For decades, without sharing this with anyone or asking for help, I quietly saved. I believed this was my duty as a mother. My son, Michael, grew up to be a diligent and hardworking young man. He graduated from college successfully and secured a job in a New York firm. On that day, I secretly cried in the closet thinking, we finally made it. As I reached retirement, my strength had dwindled. Holding a grocery bag now caused my hands to tremble, and recently, my knees had started to ache, making every stair feel like a mountain. One day, Michael said over the phone, "Mom, I imagine it must be tough on your own. Why not move to New York? Living together, I can be there if anything happens." Those words felt like a divine rescue to me. He really watches over me, I thought. Thus, I found the resolve to leave behind my cherished home filled with memories. I organized my belongings, bid farewell to neighbors, tears welling as I packed tiny flower pots into boxes. With that, I headed to Michael's home in New York. A new chapter was beginning. A mix of excitement and anxiety in my heart as I wondered, can I lean on them a little now? Can we truly support each other as a family unit? Full of hope, I crossed the threshold of their home. Yet looking back now, I realized that when I said, "I'm home," no one replied with, "Welcome back." That was the beginning of everything. My new life in New York City began in June 2023. On moving day, Michael came to pick me up at the train station, smiling as he introduced me to my new home. "Mom, this is the place." The condominium was spacious, especially by New York standards. A 3-bedroom apartment with ample sunlight and a clean ambiance. My room was prepared, and my luggage already delivered, allowing me to settle in seamlessly. In the initial days, we shared dinners together. "Mom, your stew is so nostalgic," they would occasionally say with a fond smile, but slowly, that joy faded. Before long, I noticed there wasn't a setting for me at the dinner table, and when I tried to help with chores, I'd often hear, "You don't need to bother with that." And so it went, the small cracks widening into chasms of separation and silence. One day, as I stood in the kitchen plating some pickles in a small dish, a voice came from behind me. "Hey, isn't that for Mom? We're watching her salt intake." There was a sharpness in the tone. But reflexively, I just smiled slightly and said, "I'm sorry, I'll be more careful." The next day, morning came, and I sat down at the dining table for breakfast. But it was quiet. No one else joined. After a bit, when I walked into the living room, I discovered they'd already finished eating. "Mom, you weren't up, so we just ate without you." Hearing that, there was a tiny sting deep in my chest. The alarm had rung loudly, and I was up by 6:30 like clockwork. It was just that I stayed put in my room out of courtesy, not wanting to be in the way in the kitchen. These small unease moments began to stack up with each passing day. At night, when I headed to the bathroom, the hallway light would suddenly get switched off. When I attempted to fold the laundry, I'd be stopped with, "Oh, that's already been taken care of." Slowly, an unsettling realization crept upon me. It felt like I was existing in a place where I simply shouldn't be. One day, I hesitated but decided to have a heart-to-heart with my son. You know, I've been sensing a bit of tension around here. Am I being too much of a bother? With a laugh, he brushed it off. Mom, you're overthinking. My wife's just exhausted from work every day. If she's quiet when she gets home, that's just her thing. Yet, there was undoubtedly something contained within that silence. A chill hung in the air. The gentle sighs. The way the dishes were placed down with a slightly sharp clink. All of it, I felt, was somehow directed at me. And so, bit by bit, I began to live as though I needed to make myself almost invisible. One morning, as I was about to take the trash out, an older woman from the same floor greeted me. "Good morning. Oh, you're the new neighbor, aren't you?" I nodded lightly and introduced myself. She smiled, somewhat wistfully, as she said, "I also lived with my son and daughter-in-law long ago. But you know, as you get older, just sharing the same roof can feel like suffocating." "Oh?" Surprised, I asked, "Really?" She leaned in, her voice lower. "At this age, what's most important is keeping your feelings calm. Don't let yourself become just a shadows. Don't forget that." Those words pierced right through my heart. In that moment, I tried to laugh it off. But those words stirred thoughts within me about my own presence. Do I belong here at all? Have I merely become an unnecessary burden? And more than anything else, what if I fade away like this, and no one notices? Those doubts swelled silently in the background of my daily life, and I found myself unable to halt their growth by the end of October 2023. That day, my knees felt heavy and slightly off from the morning. But I persisted, thinking, as long as I can manage, I have to keep doing things myself. I did my usual chores, completing the laundry and cleaning the bathroom. However, as evening approached and I entered the bathroom to take a shower, the tiles were a bit wet underfoot, and before I realized it, I was falling back hard. Oh no! In that moment, as I lay there on the cold floor, it was clear to me, this isolation was more than physical, and the time had come to address it. With a dull thud, a searing pain shot from my knee to my hip. I couldn't even muster a sound, just curled up on the floor, trembling from the shock. Reality finally crept in as I noticed my phone vibrating beside me. I stretched out a shaky hand and managed to dial for an ambulance. The emergency team whisked me away to the hospital, where an X-ray revealed the damage. The doctor's words were both confirming and a bit chilling. "There's significant damage to your right knee joint. This is common as we age, but if left untreated, it'll impede your daily life. A minor surgery and a 5-day hospital stay should help." My mind floated in a foggy haze as I absorbed the information. After being treated, I lay down in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling until I felt the phone heavy in my hand. Just to hear his voice, to see his face, every fiber of my being longed for that connection with my son. I summoned all my courage and with trembling fingers sent him a message. "If you have a moment to spare, just 10 minutes, could you come to see me?" I pressed send and stared at the screen, waiting for what felt like an eternity. Finally, the read receipt appeared, and shortly after, his reply. "Mom, I'm sorry. I've been getting home late and she's been upset. You understand, right? Family comes first." As I read those words, a deep breath escaped my lips, almost involuntarily. Gently, I placed my phone face down and pulled the blanket up over my head. It wasn't anger that flooded my heart. It wasn't even sadness. It was the feeling that something within me was quietly crumbling away. Something inside me realized then and there that a chapter was closing. Maybe I had reached an age where asking for help felt like a bother, like an unwelcome burden. When the words, "family comes first," are spoken, I find myself with no counter-argument. I felt something within my being quietly fold like an old, cherished letter sealed away. I shut my eyes in the silence. The light from the street lamps filtered in through the narrow gap in the curtains, casting a soft glow on the ceiling. As I stared at that glow, memories from long ago played vividly in my mind. I remembered those nights years past when my son, then just a child, lay feverishly in bed crying. I'd rub his back for hours, softly singing lullabies until morning. I thought of the day his fever broke. and he smiled up at me with those innocent eyes, saying, "Mom, your hands are magical." In those days, my only priority, my sole reason to keep going, was simple: my son's health and happiness. Now, that same child tells me, family comes first. It's the right phrase, I suppose. Everything about it signifies the correct order of things. Yet to me, it sounded like a cold announcement that my presence no longer held meaning. My heart twisted tight and sharp. Lying on the hospital bed, gazing at the white ceiling, I whispered into the emptiness, "Being unnecessary, it's this cold, isn't it?" That night, sleep was elusive. Only the quiet, persistent sound of my tears soaking into the pillow interrupted the silence. It's a night I'm sure I'll never forget. In the stillness of that hospital room, lying there under the dim ceiling glow, I understood that a void in my heart had been left behind after receiving my son's indifferent message. It wasn't anger or sorrow. It was just a silent crumbling within. When do mothers become a lower priority? When do we stop being necessary? Those thoughts swirled through my mind repeatedly as the night wore on. The clock's hands drifted past 10 o'clock. I reached for my phone and contacted an old acquaintance involved in legal matters. He had been instrumental a few years back when my husband passed away, assisting with the estate's management. He was someone I trusted implicitly. "I'm sorry to bother you so late, but there's something urgent I need help with," I began, my voice tinged with a sense of resolution. After briefly explaining my situation over the phone, he paused in silence before reassuring me quietly, "Understood. Your intentions are clear to me." From the following morning, I expedited my discharge from the hospital and took a taxi back to my home in suburban New York. Though my legs still ached, I managed to reach the front door with the aid of a walking cane. Upon entering, I retrieved a single red piece of paper and carefully affixed it in a conspicuous spot at the entrance. The paper carried the following message: "Notice: the residents of this home, by the wishes of Margaret Thompson, relinquish any rights to inheritance or estate claims. The property valued at approximately US $840,000 and disclosed bank accounts are to be transferred to the Lonely Elderly Support Foundation, as per her intentions. All legal proceedings have been concluded. Further correspondence should be directed through the attorney." The red letters stood out, clearly illuminated by the morning sun. Surprisingly, I felt an inner calm. There was neither sadness nor anger within me, just a small sense of relief at having finally made a decision. By early afternoon, my son returned home from work. Upon noticing the paper at the door, he froze, unable to move. The moment he saw me, his eyes widened in shock. He opened his mouth to speak, but words escaped him. "Welcome back," I said gently. But he merely stood there, gazing at the floor, his lips trembling. "You have a family now. You don't need me anymore, do you?" He made no reply. Instead, he stared at the notice before slowly sinking to the floor beneath its weight. Observing him, I found myself unable to cry. Perhaps I couldn't have, even if I had wanted to. I might have already reached the point where I had no more tears to shed. This is my final responsibility as a mother. Murmuring these words silently to myself, I headed back inside and began to pack my belongings. My future destination was a small assisted living facility on the outskirts of Seattle. In spring, its tranquil gardens would bloom with cherry blossoms, a place where residents were called by their names. In an environment where nobody would think of themselves as a burden, I quietly submitted the application for residency without notifying anyone. Before leaving, I placed a small envelope on the kitchen table. Inside were a few childhood photographs of my son and copies of the letters I had written to him each year, accompanied by a single line: "A mother won't wait forever." My life had certainly been devoted to being a mother. But now, before anything else, I sought to reclaim my individuality, to restore a sense of quiet dignity. Whether my choice was right or wrong ceased to concern me. One absolute certainty remained. That night marked the beginning of my journey to recover my own life. From that day forward, I cut all connections. I changed my phone number and set up all my letters to be returned. It wasn't out of anger. I no longer felt the need to blame anyone. It simply felt as though the small flame of hope within me extinguished quietly. I, Margaret Thompson, decided to step back from being a mother, at least for a while. Leaving New York behind, I settled in a quiet assisted living facility outside Seattle. It was near the end of winter, and small buds began to swell on the cherry blossom trees in the facility's garden. My room was modest, yet the view of the surrounding hills from the window and the wind's gentle whispering at night brought comfort, as if I had found a homecoming of the heart. Every morning at precisely 7, the facility played morning exercises on the radio. Afternoons were for reading, and evenings, I sipped tea with others in a quiet lounge. No one asked, "When are you coming back today?" or commented offhandedly about leaving the lights on. No brows furrowed in disapproval at my actions. For the first time in my life, perhaps, I was experiencing time belonging to no one. One day, a staff member casually asked, "Margaret, you seem cheerful every day. Don't you have any family visitors?" I chuckled softly and replied, "No, they don't visit. But it's all right. I have people I can talk to here." It wasn't bravado or irony, just honesty. I always thought family should take care of their elders. That's what I believed for a long time. But it turns out, it wasn't so, especially as one grows older. It seems perfectly okay to choose to live in the quietness one desires. I plan to spend my days here without leaving anything behind, nor passing anything on. Making a will isn't necessary. I've already set up for whatever money remains in my accounts to be donated to the Lonely Elderly Support Foundation. While the amount isn't substantial, it might at least cover lunch for the young staff members here. Because I lived a life as a mother, now, I wish to be peacefully contented as just Margaret until the end. In the garden of our facility stands an old cherry tree. A bench nestled against its trunk has become my daily reading spot in the afternoons. One breezy day, as a gust of wind turned a page, a memory of my son in his childhood came to mind. His 6-year-old figure sprinting toward me, lunchbox in hand, with a wide beam on his face. "Mom's rice balls are the best in the world." That sweet voice rekindled itself softly in my heart. At that moment, tears welled up in my eyes. But they weren't tears of sorrow. A natural warmth of thankfulness quietly filled my heart. I no longer held resentment or expectations toward my son. In the journey of life I cultivated, he walked the path of a son, just as I walked the path of a mother. Our paths simply no longer converged, and neither was necessarily in the wrong. However, one truth remained steadfast. If I had the chance to choose this life over again, I'd still work for my son's future in the same way, because that's what being a mother means. My life wasn't filled with luxury or fame, but the scent of warm miso soup crafted in a small kitchen for my son, sneaking a hot water bottle quietly into his bed on chill nights. It's these simple, intimate gestures that formed the best moments of my life. All of these experiences are my true pride. And now, I've finally come to a point where my primary focus is a peaceful heart, not doing things for others. It might be a bit late for that, but it's my second life. My name is Evelyn Turner. Throughout my 75 years, I've always believed the bond between parent and child is unbreakable, no matter what. However, reality turned out differently. The bond that I held in my heart with great care slowly became a one-way street, and the place I stood waiting for their return became empty, with no sign of anyone coming back. As I aged, my voice stopped reaching anyone. Even the words, "thank you," gradually faded away, replaced by a request for quiet, and an unspoken plea for less presence, filling the air in the room. As a mother, did I make a mistake somewhere along the way? There were days I worked tirelessly, thinking of my child's future. Those were days when I put my hopes in a single sandwich and repeatedly sacrificed my own desires for new clothes, all to pay for school fees. But all of that suddenly became stories of the past, and I turned into just a nuisance in the present. Yet, strangely, I can still say, I'm glad I raised him. Through tears, I still think, thank you for being born. That's exactly why, in the end, I chose to protect myself. No expectations, no reliance. I simply wanted to cherish my own dignity. In a corner of a facility in Seattle, there's a small cafe space. Once a week, local kids come by, read picture books, or learn origami with the grandmas there. I look forward to those hours every week. One day, a young girl said to me, "Grandma, your smile is like cherry blossoms." Her words gently warmed my heart, filling it. I might have moved on from being a mother, but I felt that, as a person, I could still leave something in someone's heart. Now, I wish to spend the rest of my life not for someone, but where I can smile peacefully. Without clinging to past regrets, without being scared of what the future holds, just living in gratitude for the small joys present, right here. I do not have any regrets. For giving birth to my son, for raising him alone, for saving $250 every month over 40 years, patiently. All of that forms the pride of my life. Even if it didn't pay off in the way I hoped it might. Also, if you, having heard this, feel prompted to consider, how am I treating my parents? That alone gives meaning to my story. What would you do? If, one day, unexpectedly, your child said, "Well, my spouse is more important than you, Mom," would you lower your head and let your tears fall quietly? Or would you stand up to protect your dignity? I made my choice, the quiet yet unmistakable step towards protecting my life. And here I am, waiting for spring in a peaceful way, softly relaying this story to you. Message. Parental love seeks no return. That essence doesn't change despite being separated by uncountable miles. For both mothers and fathers, there's an endless search for understanding and affection, a truth hidden between generations. Dwelling on this note, if you still have a chance, any chance at all, cast a look back and it might revitalize a past filling your life now with unforeseen joys. If, perhaps, eyes land upon these words, may they softly awaken tender dialogues in quiet homes, where warmth mutually rekindles. Love, as boundless as the sky, always finds its way back home at the end of the day. However, anyone can remember after all. What if tomorrow was the last day you could see your parents? What would you do? I'm eager to hear your thoughts. Your one sentence might change someone's life.